Hello, hello, hello. Yes, a regular live stream, y'all. Just a old-fashioned live stream. This is not the Let's Get Chat show or anything like that, because we wanted to bring this to Facebook as well. And so this is Consulting for Heightened Awareness, CHA. All right, this is our thing, and we are going to let those notifications go out. I'm going to leave my tag up there for a few minutes so people will come on in and you'll know who I am and things like that, because we're going to dive into the preview. The preview of how the trauma bond is formed. The Lord told me it was time to get up here and give you all some additional insight and to examine and explore why that course is important in the trauma healing process. Because let's face it, we want to stop getting trauma bonded to these abusers, right? Okay, well, the best way to do that definitely is to learn how that sucker is formed. The best way. And because we have to break that dependency, the best way, all right, to break that dependency on external validation as well. Because of the simple fact that, listen, you all, the reason we kept getting trauma bonded to the narcissistic abuser because we didn't know we were being trauma bonded. But now that we know what the trauma bond is, remember, it is just like a drug addiction, absolutely. And so let's let everybody come on in. I'm going to do some basic outline stuff. I'm going to give you some sneak peeks, okay, of the type of content you are going to find inside each chapter. And their lessons, there's anywhere between 3 to 5 little short lessons in each chapter. So I'm going to explain to you a little more about how the course is designed. It's simple, okay? It's not complicated, right? It's to help you all understand, what's going on inside the brain and the body during that trauma bonding process. Because when we have a solid understanding of that, then we can prevent ourselves from getting trauma bonded. So it's like, yes, there was one recently that thought she got me trauma bonded to her. Love bombs don't work on us anymore when we realize that's what they're doing, because that plays on our neurotransmitter known as dopamine. And eventually that dopamine is going to convert to norepinephrine, aka adrenaline. That is what the abusers are addicted to. We are not. Okay? That's right. God chosen are not addicted to their adrenaline, because that's one of those childish things that we have to put away. Sure, there was a time in our life when we were younger that we were, because we didn't know yet, right? Okay, now that we know and we put away a lot of that stuff, we outgrow things as we're supposed to. All right, so let me go ahead and, yes, we can take that off now. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the comments over here. And you will see in the descriptions below, okay, we are on the YouTube channel and Cognitive Dissonance, and Facebook at Michelle Dickey and Consulting for Heightened Awareness. God wanted me to stream this across all because it's very, very important to understand why God had me create that course for you all. And so we are at the 5-minute mark, so let's get going, okay? Now, how the trauma bond is formed course. This is the outline. I'm going to read it to you. This is what it looks like. And you'll find something similar to this on the website as well. Okay? At cdhrwdrmd.org. You scroll down a little bit and you'll see it in the feature. You will see an outline similar to this for all the courses. that are available at CHA Academy. And this one here, okay, for how the trauma bond is formed, chapter 1 is all about understanding the ego. We have to understand what that is and what its role is in the trauma bonding process. Chapter 2 is all about understanding dopamine. That's right. Chapter 3 is all about understanding norepinephrine, adrenaline. Chapter 4 is how dopamine, norepinephrine, and ego are affected by excessive flattery. Chapter 5, overinflated ego and unclean spirits. That chapter outlines how an overinflated ego opens portals for unclean spirit, aka demon spirits. Chapter 6 is dopamine, norepinephrine, and psychoactive substances. This is where, throughout all of this is where my forensic toxicology knowledge comes into play. I have God's wisdom and basic scientific facts. Okay, you all are not bogged down with overly sophisticated and unnecessary words. No, not in any of the material. If I have any word that you might be unfamiliar with, I go ahead and I give you the definition or a synonym. Okay, I simplify it. Remember, we are all about simplifying the complex. Yes, in this ministry and the work. And that chapter 6 is where you'll get the answer as to how the trauma bond is just like a drug addiction. And then chapter 7 is the withdrawal, because we have the same withdrawal symptoms from the narcissistic abuser that we will have if we got addicted to a psychoactive substance. Okay, yes, the withdrawal symptoms are identical. Okay, because the trauma bond is like a drug addiction, because the trauma bonding process manipulates the brain chemistry. And so there's a bonus chapter with some additional food for thought, and there's no pop quiz. So let me tell y'all about the pop quizzes. They're easy peasy. The notes, the PDF notes that are included with each chapter, bullet point, I highly encourage you all to print those out or at least save them digitally somewhere on your device, because those are where the answers are. And the pop quizzes are not graded. They're just fun little things for you, all right, to test yourself. All right, that's it. And you do get a certificate of completion at the end. So let me go ahead and go down the list of what you'll get at CHA Academy when you enroll in how the trauma bond is formed, or any of the courses for that matter. What you get, well, actually with how the trauma bond is formed, and we're going to do more about how to deal with toxic coworkers later. But those two courses give you annual access. Okay, you have access to the course material for 1 year to learn and complete at your own pace. And then all PDF documents are downloadable for you to keep. Okay, get valuable connection between God's word and basic science. In how the form, you get a copy of the BTBW magazine, volume 1, issue 2. Because that magazine is part of learning how to break those trauma bonds. And I highly encourage people, when you download your copy, to get a protective thingy. Remember, you can get your, for whoever wants to get just the magazine, you can get that at the website as well for just $5. Seriously, print it out and then get you one of these things. Because we talk about, what is that trauma bond to the world? And then got to break that dependency on external validation. That's huge right there for breaking trauma bond and overcoming trauma triggers. Because when we are dependent on external validation, we are easily triggered. Right? So when we are no longer dependent on external validation, because we know the Godhead is within, we're good. We're not easily triggered anymore. Okay, you all? So, but that copy comes with the course, How the Trauma Bond is Formed, as well. Okay, so we got perks. Okay. You'll have interactive discussions for collaboration. And I check in daily. That's right. I check in daily to see if there's any discussion, questions, what have you, to tend to. I am your instructor. I am Michelle Dickey, your instructor at CHA Academy. And I'm bringing you an overall insightful and meaningful learning experience. And again, the certificate of completion. And then for How the Trauma Bond is Formed, fun, non-graded pop quizzes. Again, they're real simple, not anything to be afraid of. But see, this is the outline for the video ad that we did a while ago. Okay. Answering the question about what is Consulting for Heightened Awareness Academy. I'm glad you asked. Okay. So, like I said earlier, we don't bog y'all down with unnecessary words and things like that. We keep it to the point. Yep, to the point. You have short video lessons that go with the PDF notes. And so we are going to share with you all what you are going to get in the welcome video when you enroll in the course. Okay? That's right. As I said, to give you all a better picture of what you get when you enroll and how the trauma bond is formed. The welcome video is going to say, welcome to How the Trauma Bond is Formed. And then welcome to Consulting for Heightened Awareness, CHA Academy. A place to learn more about the why and how behind the abuse, or more specifically, narcissistic abuse with biblical and scientific truths. God's wisdom and scientific facts. Basics. Starting with how the trauma bond is formed, you will gain the knowledge and wisdom you need to level up your healing and spiritual growth. So congratulations for taking this next step in your healing and spiritual growth. We hear people talk about how the trauma bond is like a drug addiction, but what does that mean? We also hear people talk about how the withdrawal from an abuser is like a drug withdrawal, but what does that mean? So here at CHA Academy, you will get answers to those questions and more. You will find a community page with each course where we can interact with each other, asking questions and sharing what is learned. There are fun pop quizzes at the end of each lesson. And hey, no pressure. These are not graded. The quizzes are for you to test your knowledge. And each lesson is equipped with a discussion area where we can interact as well. That's what I go in and check on a daily basis. Okay? Once we have a better understanding of what happened inside the body and brain during the trauma bonding process, it becomes easier to break the trauma bond, not just to the abuser, but the trauma bond to the world. The unhealthy attachment to people and things. Plus, it becomes impossible to get trauma bonded to another abuser. Okay? That's just an example. There's a little bit more. But I'm just giving y'all previews, all right? Because we have to promote part of the 5 Ps, but I want to bring you all, I'm going to read you the first few paragraphs of the video lesson that you will hear in lesson 1 about what is the ego really? Like, what is it? Right? Because remember, chapter 1 is all about understanding the ego. Because we need to understand what was happening to us as the narcissistic abuser was love bombing, right? Yeah, putting us on a pedestal, idolizing, right? And so that increased what? The dopamine that eventually converts to norepinephrine, adrenaline. And we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm giving you all the type of information, giving you some example of what we mean when we say God's wisdom and basic scientific facts. And then for some of the other stuff, tried and true techniques. Okay? So I'm giving you all the simplicity. Because I know it can seem like, wait a minute, why do I want to enroll in this course, right? I know some of y'all are asking yourself that. Why would you want to enroll in how the trauma bond is formed? Lesson 1 in chapter 1. We all have heard many refer to narcissistic abusers and narcissistic types having a big and fragile ego, which is true. They do have very fragile ego. They also have an overinflated ego, which is what makes it so fragile. But what is the ego? The ego is one of a 3-part psychological system in the brain. The ID, the id, ego, and superego. That comes from an article written by Schill in 2022. It is the biological energy component that houses the human fight or flight responses and is where norepinephrine is most prevalent. You'll learn more about that in a later chapter. The ego is also where cognitive dissonance, aka confusion, is heaviest. Deeming this little gem of an ego the responsibility for justifying human behaviors. That comes from an article written by Henriques in 2021. Rather than see behavior as it is, the ego will justify or make excuses for a particular behavior. We can say the ego is a justification tool, just like how the devil uses cognitive dissonance as a weapon of deception. The ego also causes us to justify our own behaviors until we learn there is no need to do that if we are authentic, meaning our actions match our words and we don't owe an explanation for certain things anyway. The ego will cause people to over-explain in an attempt to prove something too. Hence why we notice when the narcissistic abuser is trying too hard to prove they are a good person, as they are largely ego-driven, unable to adapt to a changing environment. When the ego prevents a person from being able to adapt naturally to a changing environment, it causes the person to go into panic mode. Again, from an article written by Schill in 2022. The ego is also responsible for tricking a person into taking something positive and thinking of negative what-if questions surrounding that positive proposition. That comes from the other article written by Henriques in 2021. So there's your sneak peek into lesson 1, how we're getting a better understanding of how the ego plays a big role in the trauma bonding process. Any question? I'm not seeing any yet. Okay. So if you catch this on the replay and you have questions, don't hesitate to drop those in the comments. I will get to them as soon as possible. Yes, on Facebook as well. And so, welcome to lesson 2 preview. And I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs that you will hear in the short video lesson, and you will see bullet points in the notes that go with that video lesson. What is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is that discomfort that occurs in the brain when two competing cognitions occur. That comes from an article written by Burke et al. In 2017. Meaning, confusion in its simplicity. Anytime someone does or says something that goes against our preconceived beliefs, it will cause confusion inside the brain. The enemy loves this, and that's why he uses it as a weapon of deception. It should come as no surprise then that abusers love to check our face to see if we are confused. Cognitive dissonance is easily induced. Action don't match words. And this is where the connection to the ego begins, as this confusion is heaviest in the ego. Once a person becomes confused by a ton of contradiction, they lose their ability to self-think. Being unable to think for oneself leads to following a crowd. Following the crowd is conforming to the world. Remember Romans 12, verse 2, that we're not to do that. There is a saying floating around that says the mind will be programmed by the age of 35. But God's wisdom says otherwise, as he hastens us on his time. Isaiah 60:22. That's just a preview. Remember, y'all, we're breaking it down for you in its simplicity. The type of information you are going to get. All of this is up and ready. As soon as you enroll in how the trauma bond is formed, you go right to lesson 1. Well, you'll see the welcome video, okay? And then you'll download your copy of the BTBW magazine, right? All right, and then you'll go right to chapter 1. It's in there. The video's there. The information is all there. See, this is why God said we're going to tap into some techniques that the other side of marketing uses. However, we're not using it for deception, right? That's God's chosen ones don't do that. So what I'm giving you all in this, I guess if you want to call it an infomercial, that's fine. But what I'm giving you all in this video is example of stuff that is in the course already, waiting on you. Okay? So what do you get in lesson 3 inside chapter 1? Ego and cognitive dissonance connection. I know it's a challenging word to pronounce. So again, I'm just going to give you the first couple of paragraphs because you'll get the rest when you enroll in the course. Okay? I'm going to let that stroll down there while we cover these 2 verses for you all to get something to write that down. When the ego is stroked, it leads to further confusion. The very cognitive dissonance we are talking about. Remember in lesson 1 that the ego is where fight or flight responses are housed, so to speak. For clarity, it is the amygdala that controls the fight or flight response. That's from the Arizona Trauma Institute, from my training with them. When the ego is overinflated, that fight or flight response contributes to cognitive dissonance by clouding logic and reasoning. A person is unable to think clearly in a state of fight or flight, which is why the enemy loves to cause fear-mongering messages that will directly affect the ego. Not to mention that keeping people in a constant state of fight or flight contributes to trauma. The constant push-pull with emotion will cause a person to become so traumatized they won't know which way is up or down, or right or left for that matter. So there's your first 3 lessons, okay, out of 5 lessons in chapter 1. There's your preview. Because I want to try to keep this stream to like no more than an hour if possible. Because we do have additional work, like later on when we go live with Drive By with Michelle and then our Bible study. Okay. But I wanted to get on here early today and go ahead and have this here for whoever is interested. So let's move on to chapter 2. Give you a little sneak peek there. Remember, chapter 2 is all about understanding dopamine. And it's very, very important because it's one of the key players in the trauma bonding process. And we got to remember, think about when we are young, right? We're kids. Okay, we're actual children growing up. And we do something, we create something, we draw something or whatever, right? And later on in life, we look at it and we go, oh boy, that was awful. But, okay, our caretaker would do what? Yay! That's beautiful. Thank you, honey. Right? What does that do? Yes. Builds up dopamine. And so that's where it begins. The dependency on external validation. It begins in childhood. Obviously. And so what is dopamine? This is lesson 1 in chapter 2. What is dopamine and how it builds a dependency on external validation? See why this is important in the trauma healing, right? Okay, because when we can understand what's going on, it makes it easier to break that dependency on external validation. And it's going to be a process. For those who are in that season, keep going. Because you will get there. We all do. So I go ahead and take that off for a moment. There we go. Okay. Dopamine is the reward pleasure neurotransmitter in the brain that is induced by pleasurable things, such as excessive flattery or anything that brings on that feel-good feeling. When at a normal and healthy level, the brain chemistry is operating as it should with the normal processes of metabolism and elimination. That comes from that big green toxicology textbook back there. Okay, Hoffman et al., 2015. All right, so we cover more on that in the next lesson after this one. I just want to introduce y'all to that concept. You will see how each lesson flows from the next one. It is in an orderly fashion. So I introduced you to that concept and then let you know we're going to expand on that coming up. When we become dependent on external things to make us feel better, this feeds the dopamine, or rather induces an influx of dopamine. As the trauma bond is forming, an excessive amount of dopamine is induced, leading to a state of euphoria. The old on cloud 9 feeling as though we are in love with the perfect mate. We later learn this is just a fairy tale fantasy. Excessive dopamine is what trauma bonds people to external validation. See the connection now as to why we're big on breaking that dependency on external validation. And the good news here too, when you enroll in the course, you will then get access also to a masterclass titled How to Break That Dependency on External Validation at no extra cost. And it's in the archive. So I'll go ahead and tell you, when you go into your portal, go into the community, okay? In the community forum, you'll see a tab that says events. When you click on it, it'll take you to any upcoming and past event. And at the top, you'll see another tab that says past. Click on that. And there's 2 of them as of September 2023, okay? And that how dependency on external validation is there. That's right. And so you get access to that to help you. I highly encourage you to finish this chapter before you go on over there and watch that, though, okay? There's a reason. Because the information, right, like we said, excessive dopamine is what trauma bonds people to external validation, creating a dependency on it. When we receive a constant influx of feel-good, flattering words or anything that induces that pleasurable sensation, create a bond to the person dishing out that excessive praise. It is an unhealthy attachment to a person. When this happens, it becomes difficult to distinguish between a genuine compliment and a love bomb. And well, we see the love bomb being dished out on the societal level, don't we? Yes, we do. Every single day. Remember, the enemy had to trauma bond us to the world first so that we would be easier to trauma bond to one of his flying monkey narcissistic abusers, right? Okay. So how is it dished out on the societal level? Think about the feedback system. That's a big one right there. And I'm not saying that we don't leave feedback genuinely, okay? Yes, I do too. It depends on what it is, okay? So, because there is a healthy level within that system, okay? But we don't allow it to boost our dopamine. We see it for what it is. That's a big part of why also we need to break that dependency on external validation so that we can better understand that Godhead is within and God is the only validation that we need. We don't need external. No. The evildoers are the ones who need that external stuff. So lesson 2 in chapter 2. How dopamine is supposed to function and what happens when it is altered. Again, coming from that big green textbook that you can see back there. Yeah, on the bottom shelf, you see a big green textbook. All right, the Hoffman et al. 2015. Dopamine is supposed to function as a mediator between norepinephrine and serotonin. Now, serotonin is the relaxing neurotransmitter, while norepinephrine, aka adrenaline, is the anxiety-driven neurotransmitter. Dopamine is supposed to mediate the fluctuation between the other two for emotional regulation. Ding, 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 ding. There are a lot of other little helpers known as enzymes that are involved in this process with dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. But for the sake of simplicity and to stay on topic regarding the specifics to how the trauma bond is formed, we will leave those enzymes for a later discussion if anyone is interested. Most importantly, the key players are dopamine, norepinephrine, and to an extent, serotonin. But the top 2 is dopamine and norepinephrine, okay? because dopamine is responsible for mediating the fluctuation between norepinephrine and serotonin, it is the target for building the trauma bond by inducing an excessive influx of it. Over time, that constant influx of dopamine will not be able to properly mediate the normal functioning in the brain, leading to sudden moments of highs and lows. Think about how a drug addiction occurs. Highs and lows, right? When a person becomes, this is well known. When a person becomes addicted to, let's say, a psychoactive substance, well, they get that initial high, right? What ends up happening because they got addicted to that high, right? And then it wears off, and now it got a low, right? That's a push-pull. And so what do addicts typically do? Right, they will consume more of that drug, trying to get back to that initial high. Well, that's what happens to us during the trauma bonding process to one of these narcissistic abusers, because we always are wanting the good guy or the good gal to come back, right? Yeah, that's a big reason why many of us stayed as long as we did in those situations, because we were trauma bonded and we were staying hopeful that the good one would come back. Same concept applied. So this is chapter 2, lesson 3 preview. What trauma does to dopamine. As the abuse manipulates dopamine, it causes an abnormal high and low of dopamine, which is why it cannot mediate norepinephrine and serotonin properly. Too much or too little dopamine leave the brain and body in a constant state of dysregulation, leading to emotional dysregulation. This is how trauma works on the brain, which is very similar to how psychoactive substances alter the brain chemistry. It is very much like the push-pull on emotion, which is the traumatizing component of the abuse. The sudden influx of dopamine leads to crashes, as the body cannot properly metabolize the internal chemical, as the body is designed to manage a specific amount of each neurotransmitter in a given day. The abuse disrupts our normal digestive process. In turn, the abuse and trauma also disrupt the normal metabolism of dopamine. Okay, so there's your first 3 lessons out of the 5 in chapter 2. Each chapter, as stated earlier, for those who need this reminder, each chapter in the course comes with anywhere from 3 to 5 lessons. Okay? And it looks like, yeah. Okay. Now we're going to move on to chapter 3. I'm looking at the clock here because I don't want to go much over an hour with this preview of how the trauma bond is formed for you all, because it's very, very important to understand how narcissistic abuse does all of this. And then we can see it on the societal level, and we see how the narcissistic abusers are trauma bonded to whatever matrix they're trauma bonded to. And so we learn that we don't allow ourselves to get trauma bonded anymore, because we have this deep and solid understanding. And yes, we do refer to God's word as well throughout the lesson where applicable. So this would be chapter 3, lesson 1. What is norepinephrine and how it causes extreme anxiety? Norepinephrine is not only a neurotransmitter, but also a hormone that is intimately related to stress and anxiety. It serves the beneficial purpose for helping dopamine and other neurotransmitters stay in balance. While dopamine does the primary mediating between the key players for emotional regulation, norepinephrine is a secondary mediator. We'll cover more on the normal functions of norepinephrine in the next lesson, but for now, we'll focus on this little gem and how it leads to extreme anxiety. Norepinephrine as a secondary mediator, or rather, regulator of other hormonal function inside the brain and body, is largely responsible for causing anxiety when in excess. When the body is in fight or flight, the adrenal glands are prompted to release norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is also known as noradrenaline/adrenaline, which makes sense as the adrenal glands are involved in many functions of our neurotransmitter and hormonal systems. Now, adrenaline is also a stress hormone. Norepinephrine and adrenaline are supposed to work together. So we use those terms interchangeably because they are directly related within each other. When norepinephrine is released, it will flow through the bloodstream to reach the parts of our body that needs it. But when in excess, just like an excess of dopamine, our body will only metabolize what it needs, no more and no less. And the excess just kind of lingers, or as I like to say about these little gems, hang out in specific areas of the brain until the body can catch up to properly eliminate the excess. Oh, but the enemy would always love to step on in and make sure that doesn't happen. That's right. The enemy does not want our bodies to properly metabolize and eliminate toxins. And any kind of excessive thing going on in there, it becomes toxic. It's a toxin. And so the way our bodies are strategically designed by God to metabolize and eliminate toxin, the enemy likes to do things to prevent that from happening, and getting trauma bonded to the world and then to an abuser is just one of many ways that he does that. So now, lesson 2, I'm going to cover just a couple of paragraphs. How norepinephrine is supposed to function. All right, so now that we know norepinephrine is what it is and how it causes anxiety, let's explore the normal function of norepinephrine. Our neurotransmitters were provided by God for our benefit, but the enemy likes to use them to cause dysfunction. Norepinephrine is supposed to help, not hinder, our nervous system by keeping us focused, alert, and aware. When in normal balance, norepinephrine and dopamine work together with serotonin to enhance our awareness. Now you understand more about why the enemy needs to dish out all that abuse to dysregulate our neurotransmitters, to induce that cognitive dissonance, so we don't become aware of him and his tricks. Norepinephrine is supposed to work as a mood stabilizer, and it is also supposed to regulate your glucose sugar level in the bloodstream. You see, the enemy doesn't want the good stuff that's supposed to happen. Why? Well, because when we don't need external help for certain things, we are of no use to the narcissistic matrix. More specifically, a particular industry, and y'all know what I'm talking about. Because right? And so, briefly, we're going to conclude with Chapter 3, Lesson 3, the dangers of excessive norepinephrine. A couple of paragraphs here. And you will get the rest once you are enrolled in the course. That's right. And I'm going to go ahead and give this to you all one more time while we cover these two paragraphs. With a better understanding of how norepinephrine leads to anxiety that is often caused by stress on both the body and our brain chemistry, let's explore some additional dangers of excessive norepinephrine. Now remember, the excess of norepinephrine stems from an excess of dopamine. Through the conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine by DBH. DBH is an enzyme responsible for converting dopamine to norepinephrine. So now you have a better understanding why these abusers, they want to, because they're addicted to their own norepinephrine / adrenaline, okay? They are addicted to it. And they know, their demon spirits know that they need to increase that dopamine in order for that conversion to take place to, that's right, convert to more norepinephrine that makes them feel as though they exist. And that information comes from the Blood Type Diet book that's also on my bookshelf there. Once norepinephrine levels reach an extreme amount that will just hang out in certain areas of the brain and body, it takes some time to balance back out, which is why when trauma healing starts for us, we've got to let ourselves have the time and space we need, because God is going to work to help balance these things back out. And that excessive norepinephrine that we've got, because we're walking on eggshells, right? Okay, so we have a buildup as well. We don't like it. The abusers like their buildup of norepinephrine. Chosen ones don't. And so it takes us a little while, because we have to learn how to relax again. That's that serotonin, right? And so we learn to go, okay, and we sort through all of what just happened. That's going to take time, but it will level back out. And each trigger that we overcome helps to level out our neurotransmitter system. Balance between the spiritual and the physical. Y'all getting the connection now, right? Okay. One way to help this is to limit the amount of dopamine you allow into your body through any feel-good external sources. Huge during that process. In other words, we have to be intentional, right? Deliberately avoid those things that we know will induce more dopamine. And we know what they are for us, okay? That can be anything from the form of candy to any other sugary substance, okay? We want to back off of the amount of starches and carbs and sugars for a while, because that will continue, right? Because you don't want more dopamine converting to more norepinephrine while you're trying to balance back out. It kind of defeats the purpose, right? Okay, so for a temporary time. And then, of course, we learn later on that we do just fine without a lot of that stuff. When norepinephrine is in excess, it leads to that fight or flight and freeze response mentioned in lesson 2. What that does, it causes panic mode. Remember how narcissistic abusers often run around like a chicken with their head cut off? That is the result of too much norepinephrine. Because a healthy level of norepinephrine is designed to help our muscles contract so we can move. When in excess, it causes a rigid and tense-like state. The muscles cannot relax. So there is your preview of the first 3 chapters inside the course, How the Trauma Bond is Formed, at CHA Academy, btbw.com. And so that's to give you what we talk about, and so you can see and hear and learn that when we advertise for the courses at CHA Academy, that's what you're going to get, simplicity. And so you got a good example in this video of all the things that you are going to get access to inside the course. Putting that up there, because you'll also find this on the website at cdhrwdrmd.org down in the features section. And so let me go ahead and put this back up here for a minute or two for you all to get that information, that website link right there. And then, of course, you already got the CHA Academy, btbw.com. Got that. And so we got to remember it's important in the trauma healing process to break those trauma bonds, right? That's the pulling down a stronghold that God's talking about. And yes, I'm going to be doing more of these for you all, for all the things that we have going on at CHA Academy, because you all need to get a preview, give you a sneak peek, so you have a better understanding of the type of content that you are, the value that you're getting when you enroll in How the Trauma Bond is Formed, or any course, or you join as a member and you get access to those master classes. You get access to a lot of how-to, a lot of fun fact videos, short Bible sermons. Yeah, we're active. Weekly fun fact and Bible studies go up at CHA Academy too. So yeah, we're not sitting here, like I say often, we're not sitting here twiddling our thumbs. Absolutely not. And so we want you to remember that we're putting all this together for you all, because we already went through these processes. So now I pass the value on to you all to help you. Because once you know, see, that's why when I came across that question, how is the trauma bond formed on Quora, I said, you know what? I need to make a course, because that's what it's going to take. Because God reminded me that while I was in my master's program, forensic toxicology, that I had learned about psychoactive substances, toxic substances, metal toxicity. I learned a lot about all of that. Very valuable. And God reminded me, and I'll share with you all, because in the other environment I had, you'll see in some videos in YouTube and elsewhere, where there was a brown bookshelf behind me. And that big green toxicology textbook was on that. And so when I came across that question, I was on my phone, standing there next to the bed, and I came across that question, and God had me turn my head. And I was like, I can answer that. And God said, yeah, but it's going to take more than 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. And because of that, How the Trauma Bond is Formed course was born. So we got to busy. We got to work. That's what I was trying to say right there. We got to work, and we put together those short video lessons. I think there might be one close to about 8 minutes. Okay, they're not very long. And we broke it down in steps for you all. Remember, God does not overwhelm. Okay? And so you have a whole year once you enroll to complete the course at your own pace. And remember, like I said earlier, I check in frequently, okay, daily. I check for those discussions and things like that. So there's your preview, everyone. I wanted to go ahead and give you that. So when you catch this on the replay, drop those questions in the comment, and I will get to those as soon as possible. Okay, everybody? So there you go. I look forward to seeing you in the course, How the Trauma Bond is Formed, at CHA Academy, btbw.com, because you will never get trauma bonded to anyone or anything again, because you'll break that dependency on external validation. Because that dependency on external validation also leads to what? A continuation of walking in our feeling, in the emotion, letting our emotion dictate our decision and our action. Yes, by being easily triggered, right? We don't do that anymore. We do not. And nothing will trigger us, because we now understand what was going on inside the brain and body, how we got trauma bonded to the world, starting in childhood, groomed since birth to tolerate the abuse later in life. And so we understand that constant push-pull leads to that very emotional dysregulation, which is what the enemy wants. Because when we grow and mature as we're supposed to, striving to become more Christ-like every single day, that's right, we stand out further from the crowd. We're supposed to stand out, chosen one. We're supposed to stand out from the crowd. We are not to fit in. That's the wide path to destruction. And that keeps people hanging on to their childhood and their traumas. We're supposed to let those things go. Okay? And this is how we do it, by learning. Okay? Getting the education and the knowledge in its simplicity. All right? There's a lot of stuff out there that's complicated that shouldn't be. And so we took from the sources we have and we simplified it for you. All right? As always, you know, we're all about that trauma healing and spiritual growth with God's wisdom, basic scientific fact, tried and true technique, and more at Consulting for Heightened Awareness. Sending love and light to all fellow warriors. Thank you for watching, listening, and for your support. Till next time, let's show some gratitude to the Heavenly Father. And you keep being you. In Jesus' name, amen.